many are saying this is the best rookie class ever. And the good news is that there's still time for you to take advantage and buy low on these players before their value continues to go up. So what Dave Kluge and I are going to do is we are going to re-rank last year's rookie class with the top 24. And Dave, we have got 5 tiers here, 24 rookies, 6 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 11 wide receivers, 1 tight end. And
I wonder who that tight end is.
Yeah.
Ben Sinnott, man, still holding on to hope. I mean, you did see the catch, right, on the fake punt. It was beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, he's leading all rookie tight ends in playoff catches. So yes,
on special teams, yes,
on special teams during fake punts, yes. All right, so what we're gonna do? Let's jump into this. We're gonna jump into the top tier. Let's start with the sexy names first, right? We're gonna be doing this as a dynasty ranking and super flex, because when you do dynasty, it's like automatically super flex. So let's just start here, Dave. At number 1, we are both in agreement. It's Jaden Daniels. At 2, we've got Malik Neighbors. 3, Brock Bowers. And at 4, Brian Thomas Jr. Now, I don't think we have to spend much time at all on Jaden Daniels being number 1.
In the same order, so let's move to the next tier.
Well, wait a second. I do want to talk about this a little bit.
Of course, yeah.
I think there are going to be people that would say Brock Bowers might deserve to be at number 2 because of the positional scarcity. He's the only tight end on this list. And then there's also people that might have the argument that maybe Brian Thomas should be higher than Malik Neighbors because he's got himself a quarterback. He's got himself a new offensive-minded coach. What are your thoughts on these 3 players, Neighbors, Bowers, Thomas? Because we have them in the same order.
Yeah, I mean, it's really splitting hairs. Like, I don't have a really strong take. I think that regardless of who you take, you're going to be pretty happy. I think all of these guys have already checked the boxes of being elite NFL players. We're going to see that likely continue into future years. For me, I think, Brock Bowers, it's tough with him being a tight end. You got to weigh that position a little bit differently. But Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, I mean, you look at these guys and production-wise, they were very similar. I just think that Malik Neighbors has a slightly safer profile. Brian Thomas was the big play guy. He was catching balls deep downfield. He was scoring touchdowns. Malik Neighbors, on the opposite end of the spectrum, was getting some big plays here and there, but he was hampered by terrible quarterback play, and he was just a target hog. Set the rookie record for target share in a season. So I think that, looking at next year, I might prefer Bowers and I might prefer Brian Thomas ahead of Malik Neighbors. But I think that long-term, Neighbors is just the safer guy, a guy who has proven that he can draw targets at just a ludicrous rate. Again, like, we're really splitting hairs here. If you're asking me between Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., and Brock Bowers, who's going to have the best career going forward or who's going to be the most valuable in fantasy football, I think they're all going to be very, very, very valuable. I don't think you can really go wrong here.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I one thing I know we've been talking a little bit about the coaches coming in and how they're going to change things. I actually do think, as good as Liam Cohen is going to be for the Jaguars and Brian Thomas as a whole, I think what he's going to do is revive that running game a little bit, which the Jaguars did not have. So not that it's a huge negative against Brian Thomas, but I think it's something to consider. Malik Neighbors, like you and I have said, Dave, he did this in probably worst case scenario, an offense that was anemic, quarterback that was non-existent. If they get themselves Cam Ward, Shadur Sanders, whatever they do there at pick 3, I think that's going to be a huge help for them. Hopefully a quarterback can fall to them there. And lastly, Brock Bowers. This is the one that actually stands out to me because I think we have so many questions about what the Raiders are going to be. Now with Pete Carroll coming in, I think we do get some clarity. I think this is going to be another one of those run-heavy teams like Pete Carroll has always wanted to do. And, he sets himself up with a good defense like he always does. He did this. It's almost identical to when he came into Seattle. But I was looking at this, and Seattle had all of these kind of no-name tight ends year after year. Luke Wilson.
They had one good tight end.
Exactly. And eventually, you get to the Jimmy Graham years, Dave. You get to the Jimmy Graham years.
6.2 targets per game.
Yep. And we're looking at a guy who, Pro Bowler in multiple years while there. And we're looking at a guy getting 90-plus targets per game while there. We're looking at a guy who's getting
90-plus targets
touchdowns
per season. 90-plus targets per game.
Per season. Per season. My bad. But, I don't think that Pete Carroll walks in, and if anyone does have this concern, just reconsider it. I don't think Pete Carroll walks in and says, you know what we got to do? Let's establish the run with Sincere McCormick and Brock Bowers. We're going to get you blocking. If he does that, I'd be very, very scared. Very,
Yeah.
very scared.
And I think you make the good point. I'm glad we were kind of on the same wavelength here thinking about Jimmy Graham because a lot of people are going to say, well, Luke Wilson didn't do a whole lot and, these other tight ends. But there's really only during that entire Pete Carroll tenure, the only good tight end he had was Jimmy Graham, who was kind of the wide receiver one there on that team. So, yeah, I'm with it. We've talked a lot about these three guys, Neighbors, Thomas Bowers, but we just kind of glossed over Jaden Daniels at the top. And you and I talked about that last March. I remember before the draft, we had Danny Kelly on the show, and I said, is it crazy to think about taking Jaden Daniels ahead of Caleb Williams because of the rushing upside? It was kind of a hot take at the time, and it wasn't even a take. It was more of just a question. Hey, Jaden Daniels, if he realizes his ultimate ceiling, like his ceiling is going to be higher than Caleb Williams, and he realized that ceiling as a rookie, and I think that it's only going to continue trending up for here. So, kind of crazy how quickly we were to switch on that. But I think by like week 6, most people had moved Jaden Daniels ahead of Caleb Williams in the dynasty discussion.
Dude, what's crazy with Jaden Daniels is most people had the worry about his pressure to sack ratio, how many
Mhm.
sacks he was taking in college, and that a lot of what he had to do was just one read and let it go. And it's either hit that one target or run. And yes, his offense was still simplified under Cliff Kingsbury, who's actually just been really good at this with rookie quarterbacks in the NFL. He did it with Kyler Murray as well. But it's that whole you've read it as well. For the people who haven't heard this or seen this, Jaden Daniels did his VR training where he would go through the film and go through the reads he needs to make. And he was doing it at like 1.75x speed, kind of like those who listen to podcasts at 1.5x speed. And it helped his decision making. It got him up to speed for game day. So when he actually got into practices, got up to game day, he was good. He was good. I think that's really interesting. And I don't know if it's been talked about enough yet.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things about the VR stuff too is like even more than getting the reads on defenses and seeing the way that they're going to be playing against them. Talked about like the intricacies of like playing in different stadiums and
Mm-hmm.
little things like knowing where the clock is and knowing how much side or how much room they're going to have in the sidelines and things of that nature. I think that's huge. So yeah, I mean Jaden Daniels, I think he's the clear number one player from this draft. Let me ask you a question real quickly. We talked about how this year, well, the last year, the 2024 class potentially being, the best class in NFL history. How many guys, let's say you're holding on to the 101 this year that you're
Yep.
probably using on Ted McMillan or Ashton Jinty, either way, like how far are you going down the list of last year's rookies? I think there's like 8 or 9 guys that I would trade for this year's 101.
That's interesting.
Sorry,
That's
flip flopped.
interesting.
8 or 9 guys that I would trade the 101
Yeah.
for this year for last year's guys.
Okay, okay, that I agree with. The other one, I was
Right.
like, that's interesting, Dave.
Yeah.
Please explain this. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of funny because we go back to the year that Bijan Robinson was coming out, and there was a lot of opinions that, well, you have to take Bijan Robinson at 101, even in Superflex, because he's a sure thing. And then there was a lot of people saying, well, you got to take Anthony Richardson as the 101 in Superflex because he's got the highest ceiling. And so I actually don't know that it matters who you're looking at with the 101 this year, whether it's Ginty, Sanders, Ward, any of these guys. I'm in full agreement with you, Dave. And I think that brings us to our second tier
Yep.
here. Let's list out these players so we can compare them to the 101 pick in rookie drafts. At 5 in tier 2, we've got Caleb Williams. At 6, Drake May. 7, Lad McConkey. 8, Marvin Harrison Jr. And at 9, Bo Nix. And I
It's
think
crazy.
we
You could
like
cut out the entire tier 1, and this still looks like a good rookie class.
yeah, yes. 100%. 100%. Because you've got the top wide receiver from the NFL draft in this tier. You've got the top quarterback from the draft in this tier. You've got another rookie that had 1,000 yards and led his team in receiving. You've got multiple rookie quarterbacks here who started making their team good.
Or
Bo
like
Nix.
QB1s in fantasy too. Drake
Yeah.
May and Bonix.
Yeah. So it's, yeah, I mean, this tier is actually quite good still. But let's go player by player. Caleb Williams or this year's 101?
Caleb.
Yeah, I mean, he was last year's 101.
Yeah.
You're sticking there. Drake May or this year's 101?
Drake May.
Drake May, if he was in this rookie class, the 2025 rookie class, he'd be the number one overall
Number one pick. Yeah, easily.
Number one overall pick, easily. Okay, this is where things get a little bit different. Lad McConkey or this year's 101?
I'm still going with McConkey here, and I understand. There's some really sexy names from this class as we talked about in that top tier, but Lad McConkey, man, still like tore it up this year as a rookie. 1,149 yards, 7 touchdowns, 82 receptions. I was looking at the list of players that have hit the marks that he had in targets, receptions, yards, and touchdowns. Anquan Bolden, Puka Nakua, and that's pretty much it. I mean, it is such a short list of players that have been able to do what Lad McConkey did. I think that because of how good Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers, and Brian Thomas were, people are kind of overlooking how good Lad McConkey was this year. But I would easily prefer McConkey over this year's 101.
So I think it comes down to a little bit of just philosophy. Is do you prefer running back, wide receiver, which I think most dynasty people will prefer wide receiver. And then also, it's how comfortable are you with the unknown? I think a lot of
Mhm.
people might say that Ashton Ginty is a surefire pick, the same way Bijan Robinson was a surefire pick.
Same way Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a surefire pick.
Oof, oof, too soon.
I'm just saying,
Well,
there,
no, it's not.
regardless, there's no such thing as a can't miss prospect. They
And
do not
that's the point.
exist. Yeah.
And that's the point. And that's why you should be comfortable getting. I like that trade right now. Like I would do that if I'm holding on to it. The 101. I think you can actually get more because this is that time of year, Dave, where people go absolutely ape, you know what, for
Mhm.
rookie draft picks. And that 101 becomes so incredibly valuable to the point where you can get Lad McConkey in a second, probably. I think there are people that are willing to do that because there's like this lore around a guy like Ashton Ginty
Mhm.
where he almost becomes a superhero. He becomes a character, and we forget that it's not just a player. Like, sure, he goes to the Cowboys. He's going to have a really, really good start to his career and probably a very good career, right? You've already got a guy with a really good career.
Right.
But you also, I mean, like, there's so many dominoes that have to fall in place for Ashton Ginty to be this, like, absolute superstar. What happens if he ends up going to another team, like when Bijan Robinson went to the Falcons, and they're like, oh, they've already got Tyler Algier, and it was like a super frustrating rookie year.
Yeah.
There's just a lot that can go there.
Like, even if you want to go with the wide receiver, because it's a safer asset at the 101, it's the whole Family Guy thing. Like, ooh, Ted McMillan
It
could
could
be
be a
anything,
boat.
even a Lad McConkey.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like that, all this stuff still rings true for Marvin Harrison Jr., who maybe by many people's accounts had a disappointing year, but I mean, Dave, he was still nearly at 1,000 yards receiving. Like, it's kind of crazy that we've gotten to this point. It's just what we do is we kind of we do the comparisons of the same class. It's like
Mhm.
in normal years, yeah, Marvin Harrison had a pretty good rookie season, but when you have Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Lad McConkey, who all come out and have even better years, sure, the top
And
wide receiver finishing fourth is disappointing.
Yeah, and that's why I think that some of these guys are going to be. I think this is the tier that like I really want to try to buy in Dynasty because everybody is so enamored by the top tiers. They should be. Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Brock Bowers. They were great, but now we look at guys like Marvin Harrison Jr. and Lad McConkey that are disappointing in comparison, but they still had very good rookie years and should have bright futures ahead of them. And if you can get them at a discount because of the classmates that you can compare them to, I mean, those are the guys that I'm trying to buy.
Now I know it's just a website, right? The Football Guys Dynasty show
Yeah.
uses this resource all the time. Which, by the way, if you're listening to us or watching us and you have not subscribed to the Football Guys Dynasty show, which is Jeff Bell, Jagger May, they do a great job here for Football Guys. They use the resource Keep Trade Cut, and just looking at this from September of this year in the preseason, Marvin Harrison Jr., who is our number 8 player in this list, he was the wide receiver 3 in Dynasty. Since this season has finished, he is now the wide receiver 12.
I thought he'd fallen a little bit lower than that. Good to see that people are still holding on to hope.
I mean, it's wild to see this. Like when you look at it, it looks like just a stock market crash as you watch as you just watch that dot go down, 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 down. I would trade the 101 immediately for Marvin Harrison Jr. I think you're the same way, Dave.
Yes, I would.
I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like all that crazy to me. Um, yeah, I mean, like looking here on the website, Keep Trade Cut, 2025 early first is ranked about the same as Marvin Harrison Jr. I actually think you end up getting yourself a good deal. I would trade the 101 for Marvin Harrison Jr. and whatever someone else wants to throw in there.
Yeah. And I think with Marvin Harrison Jr., it's just a good process to buy too, because he's probably going to have a better year too. There was
Yes.
a lot of questions about his usage. It looked like he wasn't as fast as some people had hoped for. So, hopefully he can improve on his conditioning a little bit this year. Hopefully they make it more of a focal point to get him the ball. And all it takes, he could see his value just skyrocket after a few weeks. If he comes out and looks any better than he did as a rookie, he's immediately going to improve in value. And I think that the draft
Right.
capital and the name and all that is going to insulate his value for the next couple of years. So if you buy Marvin Harrison, it's very unlikely that he's going to diminish in value from where he is right now. And it's way more likely that you're just buying an appreciating asset.
Now the next guy on here, number 9, the end of this tier, Bo Nix. Where are you at with Bo Nix versus the 101? I think this is where you start to have a lot more conversations because you could fall into the pool of, well, it's positional value, a quarterback. He had himself a great season, 3,700 yards, 29 touchdowns,
Mm-hmm.
and he did it without anything around him. And that's kind of where I lean, is that he did this without really a good offensive line. He did it without really having a true good core of weapons around him. It was a Cortland Sutton renaissance. But that's about it. Like, no true running game, nobody else to throw to. And we got some rushing upside. But Dave, I think this is where I waffle a little bit. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I think this is where I'd prefer the 101 ahead of Bo Nix. I don't know what it is about Nix, man. I hope that I'm not just like holding on to pre-draft plot priors, but when I look at what he did last year, it just seems kind of fluky. It was
That's
just
what I
a
feel like I'm
well-run
doing too.
offense. Well-run offense. He was able to get the ball to open players, but the rushing to me isn't something that I see carrying over into future years. He's going to turn 25 in less than a month here. That's we know the age has been a detractor from Bo Nix, but the reality is the rushing is what's going to take a hit more than anything else. Once he turns 26, 27, 28, as he gets older, we're going to see him rush less and less, and so much of his production this year came from rushing. I don't think he's a Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen type of athlete that's going to continue rushing into his late 20s and early 30s. So I expect to see that rushing production fall off a cliff. And if that happens, his fantasy production as well will fall off a little bit. So I think this is the breaking point for me where I would take the 101 over Bo Nix.
Man, it's hard because that end of season stretch for him, where you see so many 3 and 4 touchdown games, particularly 4 touchdowns against the Chiefs, 321 yards, no interceptions, 3 touchdowns against the Bengals, 2 touchdowns against the Chargers. He certainly had some disappointing games, but I think when we talk about this, it's not necessarily how good the player is. It's how much the rest of your league is going to value that player. And I do think there are a lot of people like you and I that still hold on to the Bo Nix from before he got drafted to the Broncos. And there are many people that still remember him splitting 2 wide open receivers in that Saints game on Thursday Night Football. And I think there are many people that still remember those things. And the perceived value for him is probably not as high as that 101. And it's just, I think that 101 is probably going to remain the higher value. Like pretty handedly, actually, I think.
All right, Alfredo, about 7 minutes ago when we were talking about McConkey in the 101, because I think that's kind of the breaking point for most people.
Sure.
I tweeted out a poll on Twitter asking who
Oh
prefers,
God.
Lad McConkey or the 101. Alfredo,
Yeah.
we are in the big time minority here.
I
75-25 people prefer the 101, but all the comments are saying, well, what if GT ends up in Dallas? What if he ends up in the Chargers? Well, what if he
what
doesn't
if?
end up with one of those teams? Yeah, like sure, best case scenario, yeah, if Jinty's drafted, if the Cowboys trade up in the draft to get Jinty, yeah, then I might prefer him ahead of McConkey, but we don't know that right now. And how many times do we project perfect situations because we expect everything to be rainbows and sunshine when the reality is he could slide in the draft. He can go to a team that already has an established running back one. It's not always going to be the best case scenario. And I think that's what people get so blinded this time of year by rookie picks. And, rookie drafts are coming up soon. So everybody wants to get as many picks as possible. This, in my opinion, is the best time to sell your rookie picks because they're so inflated in value.
Yeah. I mean, just looking right now at the NFL draft order, I think the very earliest he could possibly go is 6 to the Raiders. And maybe Pete Carroll wants to establish the run there. The offense probably won't be great. Not
Splitting
the
touches with
Jets.
Sincere McCormick.
Hey now. Hey now. Hey now. If you didn't thumbs down this show before, you definitely thumbs down it now. I mean, Chicago's not out of the question at 10. And
Oh,
I know you mentioned that your Bears friends are all
dude,
saying the same
everybody.
thing.
It's Jinty or bust for all of my Chicago friends. And they're like,
Um,
who's going to be Jameer Gibbs? Well, guess what? We don't have a Penny Sewell. We don't have an offensive line. Like,
right. Right.
A running back's a finishing piece, and we are not at that point yet in roster construction.
I do think he probably ends up in Dallas at 12. Brian Schottenheimer, they want to establish the run. They
But didn't we
they
say that
really
last year
messed
about
up
Jonathan
last year.
Brooks? Like, I feel like every year we're
Yeah,
like,
but then Jerry
this running
Jones went
back's
out and
definitely
said
going
it.
to Dallas.
But then he said it. He said it out loud where he told everyone, he's like, that Jonathan Brooks kid, pretty good. Pretty good.
Uh-huh.
Can't wait to get him in the draft. And then all the teams started trading up and taking running backs, and they're like, well, never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the who knows what? I mean, the Cowboys are probably going to bring in Todd Gurley and Devonta Freeman next year. Like, I don't know. Like, they're doing some crazy stuff there. We always think that they're going to make the right move, and they just don't.
Ball up top, run it back with Rico. All right, let's go to the next tier here. At number 10 in tier 3, we got Roma Dunze, which that hurt my heart because I still think that Roma Dunze is a very, very talented receiver. I'm curious to see what the Bears end up doing, Dave, and we're going to get to the other players that are in this tier, but Roma Dunze I think is interesting because with Ben Johnson coming in, I think the Bears offense gets obviously a big arrow pointing up. It's going to be interesting because so much of Ben Johnson's offense has predicated on a lot of motion, a lot of usage of slot receivers, and the Bears don't really have that guy right now on the roster unless they decide to make DJ Moore that guy who's actually very good going in motion, who's been very good as a Z receiver throughout his career and can play the slot. But DJ Moore didn't play a lot of slot last year. Roma Dunze played a surprising amount of slot last year after not ever really playing it in college. So I think there's just a lot of questions still up in the air, despite how talented this guy is. And I think it's okay for us to have him in this tier below where Marvin Harrison Jr. was.
This is a fun question for you, Alfredo. Who do you think led the Chicago Bears in slot snaps last year?
This seems like a trick question because it would probably be Keenan Allen, but I'm going to assume it's Roma Dunze.
Keenan Allen was number 2, led the receivers, but actually Cole Kmet led the team in slot snaps last year. So, yeah, I mean, if you do compare, Roma Dunze took more snaps out of the slot than DJ Moore did, so I'd expect to see that next year. But Keenan Allen's probably out of the
totally
picture.
Different offense.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll see. But yeah, I think whoever does get the slot role in this Bears offense is going to blow up. And Roma Dunze, I think, it was really tough for him, playing behind Keenan Allen, who, if you look at the end of the year, Keenan Allen became the clear wide receiver 1 in Chicago. Like, he was out targeting DJ Moore. He was out targeting Roma Dunze. He and Caleb Williams built a strong connection. Assuming Keenan Allen is out of the picture, which he probably is going to be, somebody's going to need to step up. And I think Roma Dunze could easily be the long-term wide receiver 1 tied to Caleb Williams. So, I definitely, we're beyond the, trading the 101 for this player, but Roma Dunze, if you can get him for the 103, 104, 105, one of those early to mid first round picks, Roma Dunze makes for a great buy as well.
One of the guys I look back at is Ben Johnson before being in Detroit, spent those years in Miami where he had Jarvis Landry catching 100-something passes, 160 targets. You go back and look at that team, is they kind of had their possession guy, Devontae Parker, and then they had their field stretcher, Kenny Stills. And I think that the Bears sort of seem like they have it. They have a good possession guy with Roma Dunze. And I think you can kind of mold DJ Moore into whatever you want him to be. Do you want him to be a field stretcher? Do you want him to be your slot guy? My assumption would be that you want to put him in the slot. You want to keep him off the line of scrimmage. You want to keep him in motion. You want to get him as many touches as you can because he can create after the catch. And I think it'd be foolish for them to be like, let's go and draft a slot receiver and make him the focal point of the offense, or let's go spend money on that in free agency. It just doesn't seem like the move. And then you've got Cole Kmet, like you mentioned. So I do tend to lean that I think DJ Moore is going to have himself a nice renaissance there, while Roma Dunze can also eat. So I don't think one having a good season does not hurt the other. I think both these guys should be on an upward trajectory.
Yeah, especially, we always discount the wide receiver 2 playing for a rookie, but we see that once these quarterbacks get into year 2, year 3, they can support multiple weapons. And we saw that to start the year with Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins. Both of them were eating in this Houston offense after last year. And I mean, we did see flashes with Nico and Tank as well in CJ Stroud's rookie season. But I think this is the year that we can see Caleb Williams take that step forward. And I think that we can see, lucrative production from both DJ Moore and Roma Dunze.
Next guy on here at 11, we've got Xavier Worthy, wide receiver for the Chiefs. And even though he's come on hot lately,
I almost wonder if we're too low on him. I mean,
I don't. I still kind of sit here and wonder.
I really struggled between Odunze and Worthy. And I prefer Worthy ever so slightly, but that was a tough one for me.
I think the general public might be getting a little over their skis with Worthy because he's had this hot finish to the year. It did take a while for them to figure out how to use him, and I think we forget that Rashee Rice is coming back.
Yeah.
And what else do they do? Because like let's just say the quiet part out loud. I don't believe that Xavier Worthy is a wide receiver one for an offense. He's a very nice complementary piece. Is that fair to say? You kind of gave me the sort of.
I think he could be a wide receiver one. Like, you put him on a team with 20
He's
other
Marquise
people.
Brown, in my opinion. He is Marquise Brown.
Yeah, I mean, they're very similar players. I think he's probably, right now like a top 25 player, meaning he could be the wide receiver one on a handful of teams, but there's a lot of better wide receiver ones out there, but I mean, he's kind of been operating as a wide receiver one here, and you are right, Rashee Rice does come back next year. He's still got some of the legal troubles that he'll have to do. He could start the season with a suspension, but they're just finding ways to get the ball in Worthy's hands that they weren't doing a whole lot earlier in the season. It seemed
Right.
like early in the season they were almost exclusively using him as a field stretcher. But now we're seeing him start to get, jet sweeps and end arounds and screens and things that he can do after the catches, which is what we saw a lot more of in Texas. In Texas, Adonai Mitchell was the field stretcher and Xavier Worthy was kind of the underneath guy. And now we're seeing him do both of those things. He can play deep, he can play underneath, he can play across the middle. So I think he is growing his versatility a little bit, which is why I'm excited about his future. I was really concerned that they were going to kind of make him this one trick pony in Kansas City, but they're using him as the wide receiver one. And DeAndre Hopkins is out of the picture next year. Juju's out of the picture next year.
DeAndre Hopkins
Travis,
is out of the picture this year,
yeah,
Dave. Okay.
fair. He's done. But I mean, Travis Kelsey, he looks completely washed at this point.
Yeah.
So if there's one quarterback who can support two wide receivers, it's Patrick Mahomes. So I don't think that this is a situation where, Rashee Rice coming back is going to negatively impact Xavier Worthy. I think they have very different roles in the offense, and I think they'll be able to coexist with each other pretty well.
Yep. No, I mean, I listen. I'm. It's funny. It sounds like I hate Xavier Worthy and you love him, and we both have him as number 11 on the list. So like, it's just kind of it's just a way we are presenting it. Is I
It's
think
because we
that
talked about Roma Dunze first, and you've got Roma Dunze ahead of Worthy, and I have
right,
Roma
and you've
Dunze
got him behind.
below Worthy. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like in many ways, like how you kind of believe that we've seen the best of Bo Nix, I think we may have seen the best for Xavier Worthy. I think this
That's
is
fair.
probably what we have to keep doing. The Chiefs have gotten more creative out of necessity. They went and trade for DeAndre Hopkins. They're like, oh, great, yeah, he can't really do much. Travis Kelsey,
You look
you
real good
have
for that one game, though.
yeah, you have fallen apart really fast. Hollywood Brown, great to have you back, but like
Too
we're
little,
we're
too
we're
late.
yeah, like we're they're trying to find creative ways, and I mean maybe it does become the big breakout for him, and I'm way wrong, and his ceiling is so much higher, and he could do the things that Lad McConkey and Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors are doing, and potentially get up in there. Not saying that you're saying that, but I think we're a little capped. Next one on here, number 12, Michael Penix Jr. Now, this is interesting. You've got him at 10. I've got him at 13. This is really our first like major disagreement, I guess, in terms of the rankings, if
You
you want to call
hate
three
Michael
spots.
Penix.
Yeah, I mean, well, I get what you're doing is he's got great weapons around him, and there's the quarterback bump, and so you kind of have to be willing to value it that way.
Mhm.
I've got the guy right after him at 13. We've got Bucky Irving. I've got Bucky Irving ahead of Michael Penix, which I think most people would say that's crazy. That is a cardinal sin to have a undersized running back ahead of a quarterback in Dynasty Superflex. But I want to hear your thoughts on this first, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it just comes down to the position more than anything else.
Yep.
Penix looked good, man. Like he looked really, really good, and every single week he looked better. Of course, the big fear here is that it's a small sample size. Like if Penix did what he did over the last little stretch of the season, over a full 17 games, we'd probably be putting him right alongside Caleb Williams in tier two. But the fear, of course, is that, he only did it over 4 or 5 games. Is he going to be able to carry that over to next year? We don't know. But, just given what we saw, given the weapons around him, I still have a lot of faith in Penix. He's going to be the week one starting quarterback next year. And if he can build off of what he showed as a rookie, he's going to fly up the dynasty rankings really quickly.
I still have my reservations about Michael Penix, and maybe, like we've said with Bo Nix, I'm holding on to this a little bit too much from the pre-draft stuff.
Mhm.
I still think he's got quite a ways to go, and there's only so much that you can do when you're recovering from injury. And what he really needs is more and more game reps. I don't know that he's going to quite get there next year. Maybe he does, and he surprises us. But that small sample size you mentioned, against the Giants, Commanders, and Panthers. Three
Fair.
very, very beatable defenses. So I think we have to see. It's not like his division is a bunch of Hall of Fame defenses either. The Panthers are in that division. Like
Mhm.
we've got the Saints who have not been great, the Bucks who have been up and down. But there's going to be plenty of opportunities for Michael Penix next year to show us that he can be that guy. I'm just going to be a little bit lower because I was lower in the pre-draft process. I kind of scoffed at the pick like everyone else did, but in that short time span, he looked good. And if he's going to rely on Drake London and Bijan Robinson, like we saw in those limited sample games, then yeah, Michael Penix deserves to be way up high and like not even at 10, Dave. Like he could be, exactly where Caleb Williams and Drake may end up going. It's just all a matter of time. So we'll have to see where he goes in that. Bucky Irving is the next guy on here. I got him at 12. You got him at 13. It's not like there's a big disagreement here. I think how
This is
much
funny
of
because we
this,
just did our redraft rankings where I
yeah,
was a little bit higher on Bucky Irving going into next year than you were this year. You prefer Bucky
right.
Irving in Dynasty, and this is just I think this is a game theory positional type of thing. Like I
Yes.
just couldn't care less about running backs in Dynasty. I
Yeah.
know it's a really boiled down simple take, but like I do not care. Like I will win Dynasty leagues on the backs of Sincere McCormick and Chuba Hubbard and whoever pops up and gets hot for a couple of weeks. I just never want to pay up for a running back, especially a day 3 guy.
And it's not like we have a huge disparity here. I have him at 12, you have him at 13.
You love
I
him,
think
I hate him.
there's I think there's very much because like I think you could talk to people and some people might say, well, he needs to be up ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. Did you see this rookie year he had? He's a top 5, top 6 running back. Not saying there's a lot of people saying that, but it's something. There are some big time Bucky Irving truthers. I know in redraft he's going in round 1 in certain mock drafts that I'm seeing now as a top 3 running back. Like there's people that are just like really into Bucky Irving right now. They're trying to make fetch happen, and I think a
He was
lot of
good.
it too,
He's
Dave.
good. He's very good.
He is good. He is
Yeah.
good. Like we're not saying he's not good. I think there's a little bit of that Kyron Williams thing where
Mhm.
we're just like, you've gotta you may never get over the profile. You may never get over a guy who tested poorly. He's small. He's splitting time with Rashad White. He did take over a lot of it as we got into late into the season and into the playoffs. Um, but it's an undersized running back with late draft capital. I mean, like, how long do these guys last? Sometimes he could be very, very productive for all 4 straight years, and that's the best you could hope for from a running back. But even then, I don't think it always adds up to the same dynasty value you get from a quarterback or a wide receiver that can do it 5, 6, 7 years down the line.
Yeah, people are gonna hate me for this. Like, it's just, we're playing a game where we're trying to predict the future, and it's nearly impossible. So you try to work with, the way that things can happen. And like you said, he's an undersized day 3 running back. And for every Arian Foster out there who hits as an undersized, lowly drafted guy, you've got 100 James Robinsons who have 1 or 2 good seasons and then just completely fall by the wayside. And for me, just kind of looking at the potential outcomes here, he's more likely not to be a good long-term player than he is to be a good long-term player. And that doesn't take away from what he did in his rookie season. He looked fantastic. We talked about it when we did our redraft ranking show, that he is like top 10 in every single efficiency metric. He's one of those guys that pops off the screen when you watch him play, but so did James Robinson a few years ago, and we saw how that went. So did Kyron Williams as a rookie, and we don't know what the future holds for him. I just always get nervous of these undersized day 3 guys because the reality is that they're just more likely to be out of the league in a few years than they are to be consistent producers year over year.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's it's going to be a little bit of mental gymnastics for people, but I think we've got him adequately ranked. Let's go to our next tier here. Tier number 4. And at 14, we've got Bucky Irving's teammate, Jalen McMillan. At 15, we've got Tyrone Tracy. At 16, Ricky Pearsall. At 17, JJ McCarthy. And at 18, Keon Coleman. And Dave, this tier has an interesting mix of players that we saw do it in their rookie season versus guys that we are really projecting could take a leap in year 2. Some guys only did it for a few games. Jalen McMillan, back half of the season. Tyrone Tracy in spurts. Ricky Pearsall for like 3 games at the end. JJ McCarthy didn't play. Keon Coleman had some flashes, but I don't even know if there was ever really a game where we were
Yeah.
like, he's got it.
No.
So this what I would
Look,
call this
they
the
would take like
projection
2
tier.
deep shots a game to Keon Coleman, and he'd come down with like 1 in 4. That was kind of his role this year.
Yeah.
Could you
Don't get
imagine
me
if the Bills
started.
drafted a guy like Worthy instead?
What are you doing? Why are you trying to upset them? Sorry, Bills Mafia. Very sorry. Very sorry. Jalen McMillan is an interesting one, Dave, because Chris Godwin is going to be a free agent. Now, I also think there's a very real possibility that nobody signs Chris Godwin because he's older and he has an injury, and he goes and takes a team-friendly deal and comes right back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, that doesn't
Which is
necessarily mean
exactly what happened last time he was up for a contract. He got injured the year
yes.
before, signed a team-friendly deal to return to Tampa. I mean, they could luck into another team-friendly Godwin deal here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know that it necessarily means that him coming back to the team means that he will hop right back into a very productive role. I think Jalen McMillan really picked up his swag towards the end of the year. He had his confidence running routes. He was actually running routes with authority. That's what you look for, honestly. Like that's why I love finding confident receivers that are
Mhm.
good at running routes, finding the open space. Jalen McMillan was finally doing that. He stopped thinking, he stopped processing, and he was just doing. When he started to do that, he looked so much better, and something just clicked with him and Baker Mayfield. So I like him there at 14. Dave, Tyrone Tracy is the next guy on here. This is who I want to hear you
The last
talk
thing I
about.
want to say about Jalen McMillan, just really, really
Yeah.
quickly, is one thing I've learned over the years is never to discount a late season rookie breakout. A lot of people are just going to say like,
Yes.
"Oh yeah, well he only did it over like 3 or 4 games," but it takes rookies time to get up to speed. And we saw so many people discounting Amon St. Brown after his rookie season, like, "Well, he only did it the final 6 weeks of the season," and T.J. Hawkinson was hurt, and DeAndre Swift was hurt. We can make up excuses for Jalen McMillan as well and say, well, it was a late season breakout and Chris Godwin was out of the picture, yada, yada, yada. It doesn't matter. Like if a rookie shows us who he is late in the year, that's something that typically is going to carry over into future years. So Jalen McMillan, I think, where we're ranking guys, we could definitely have pushed him higher up the rankings, but this is just such a loaded class that I think Jalen McMillan's going to be one of those forgotten guys that, like Roma Dunze, similarly, you can get him for much cheaper than his actual value is because of all of the other bigger, sexier names ahead of him.
Man, and the way that everything finished for Jalen McMillan, 5 touchdowns over those final 4 weeks.
Hmm.
It was just hyper efficient. Maybe you want to make that argument. Way too efficient. But that's kind of been his game, even at
Yeah.
Washington. He was always very efficient. And that's kind of what we saw here. A lot of 5 receptions on 5 targets, 5 receptions on 6 targets. It was a very efficient offense for the Bucks and Jalen McMillan, and that's where the fit was just so perfect. So I don't expect the Bucks to make any huge sweeping changes there or try to plug Chris Godwin back in too early over McMillan. I think they've got their guy. The next guy on here is Tyrone Tracy, and this was an interesting one because both of us really liked him going into the season. We said, hey, go and spend your last round draft pick on him and hold on to him. Yeah, pat the back, baby, pat the back. Because Tyrone Tracy looked good. Not just good, he looked great at times.
Mhm.
And he's got the pass catching versatility. And like we said with Malik Neighbors, I kind of think this is the worst that the Giants could be. And everything should be better. I know, famous last words. It
Yeah.
can't get any worse. um, things should hopefully get better for the Giants and Tyrone Tracy, right, Dave?
It should, but I mean, last year, like Tyrone Tracy was still producing when things were really bad, so I'm not all that concerned. I mean, he genuinely, I think he's one of the best young running backs in the NFL. Bucky Irving is clearly the RB1 of this class, but Tyrone Tracy's right behind him, and there's some other guys, Gibbs and Bijan, and guys that have been in the league for a couple of years that deservedly should be ahead of Tyrone Tracy in rankings. But you start looking at his age and what he did as a rookie, like it's pretty tough to keep this guy out of the top 10 dynasty running backs. Like he is a pass catching machine. He ended up just stealing the role as the RB1 here. He has the faith of Brian Dable. And like you said, things are probably going to get better for the Giants going into next year. So Tyrone Tracy, another huge buy, somebody that I like. And, again, a lot of the reasons that I discounted Bucky Irving, Tyrone Tracy has those as well. He was also a day 3 back, but he is so much cheaper than Bucky Irving. And I've got him ranked behind Bucky Irving. But the difference is, you're going to have to pay up a lot to get Bucky Irving right now. You can still go out and get Tyrone Tracy for relatively cheap.
Yeah, what do you think? Like a second round pick, Tyrone
Uh,
Tracy?
I'd trade a
Like
second round
a,
pick for Tyrone Tracy in a heartbeat. But the thing is, nobody is
I don't
even
know if
going
other
to
people would.
think about giving up Bucky Irving for a second round pick. Like if you want
No.
Bucky Irving, you're trading probably a top 6 rookie pick. Tyrone Tracy might still be able to get him for an early second.
Yeah. Maybe we're talking out of our ass. I don't know. Sorry, Joe. Next one on here, which I will say this, like just to finish off Tyrone Tracy. I get the people that are worried about the efficiency drop towards the end of the season because that did happen. He was not nearly as efficient as he started to get more volume, but kind of like how we said with with the Bengals last year and with certain teams, like sometimes you just have to throw those games out because the team is so impossibly bad. When you're the Giants and you get to the final 5 games of the year and there's nothing left to play for, do you really think that everyone's going out there giving their 100? Like I
Mm.
want to say yes. I
No,
want to
that yeah,
say I want to say they are because it's hard to say that players are not giving their very best, but there's also a reason they're the number 3 pick in the draft. Like maybe you're giving your best and the team's just not all that talented. So yeah, I think that the arrow could point up for Tyrone Tracy.
and just in case you were wondering, I did check keep trade cut on their trade calculator.
Yeah,
They have an early second ranked higher than they have Tyrone Tracy right now. So go ahead and throw that offer out
give
there. 'Cause I'd
me
take that in a heartbeat. Meanwhile, Bucky Irving, they're saying his value is almost twice that of an early second. So probably not making that one happen. I mean, it looks like, based on their value right now, they have Bucky Irving ranked higher than a mid first this year. So you're trading a high first round pick for Bucky Irving or a high second for Tyrone Tracy. I know which one I prefer.
201 for Tyrone Tracy in the third. Let's shake and make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Next on here, Ricky Pearsall at 16. Dave, you know this is my guy. Loved him going into the
Hey,
pre-draft process.
our guy. You don't get to steal
Our
Ricky
guy.
from me. Pretty Ricky.
Oh,
He's yeah, he'd
said
fit
it
in well.
first.
Yeah.
Just saying. Just saying. Um, small sample size. Towards the end of the season of some really good games.
hmm
And I mean, I'm talking like really good 141 yards, 8 catches, touchdown, 6 catches, 69 yards, nice, and a touchdown. It actually, Dave, like if we just look at it, every time he had 6 targets, it was a touchdown.
Yeah.
And there was him getting used in the running game. There was really a role being carved out for Ricky Pearsall as the season went on here. There's still a lot of the rumors floating around that Deebo Samuel could be traded. There are, I mean, heck,
Kittle
they
could be
could.
traded. McCaffrey could be released. I
Yes,
mean, this entire
there's a lot.
49ers roster is in flux right now.
In fact, the only guy that's locked into the 49ers roster is
Ricky
Brandon
Pearsall.
Ayuk.
Oh.
Sure, Ricky Pearsall too, but Brandon Ayuk, who's injured,
Yeah,
and we
coming
don't
off
know
an
what that
ACL.
rehab is going to be like. So, I mean, it's not the craziest thing to go into the season and think like, damn, Ricky Pearsall could actually be the wide receiver 1 for the Niners if
Mhm,
Debo is gone and
mhm,
Ayuk is still recovering.
mhm.
There's a lot going on there. So, I mean, this ranking that we have him at 16 could easily look like we are way too low, and he could be along with guys like Xavier Worthy, Marvin Harrison, Lad McConkey, who are just getting peppered with targets in a good offense.
I think Ricky Pearsall could have literally put up a 0 this year. Like, gets shot in the chest in the preseason, still is able to come back and do anything at all, which is like miraculous. Like, we know how
Yeah.
hard it is for rookies who miss training camp and miss preseason games to do anything in the regular season. And Ricky Pearsall did that. Like, that alone is, we can't ignore. But like, if he literally took a 0 because of that preseason injury this year, I'd still have him inside my top 20 for all of the
Yes.
reasons that you laid out. You look at every single piece in San Francisco, they might run it back this year. They might just bring everybody back and try to do the same song and dance for the 4th year in a row. But I don't think that's where they are. I think that they realize they need to make some changes. Christian McCaffrey could potentially get released. Debo Samuel can get traded. Like you said, Brandon Ayuk coming off the injury. George Kittle going to his age 32 season. It's not crazy to think that the number one target earner next year could be Ricky Pearsall. 2 years down the road, it's even easier for his path to get there. I just think that Ricky Pearsall is a good player. Loved what we saw at Florida. The cherry on top was any production that we saw his rookie season. But my take on Ricky Pearsall still has so much to do with the player that we scouted in Florida, the guy that we watched there, the really talented, hyper athletic player. And then he's in a great position, potentially being the wide receiver 1 in a Kyle Shanahan offense. So Pearsall's another guy that we have. You've got him at 15. I've got him at 17. And it feels like he should be so much higher than that. This is a first round draft pick on a good offense with a clear path to a huge target share.
Which, by the way, the Debo Samuel rumors that I mentioned before of him being traded, they're not totally unfounded. The Niners still have to try to sign Brock Purdy to a contract,
Mhm.
and they have way too much money invested in 4 players essentially
Yeah.
right now, and it's 4 of those skill players. I, if I had to put a number on it, I'm at like a 5 in confidence that they're going to go into next season with all of those players still intact.
Oh, I'd even lower than that. I think they could save like over $8 million if they release Christian McCaffrey. Um, the tough thing is I don't know if anybody's going to want to trade for Debo Samuel after his fall off in
Mm,
production. Brandon Ayuk is a guy that they might trade. It seemed like they very begrudgingly gave him that long-term contract next year or last year, and then he didn't look great before the injury, and then he got injured. There might be a rebuilding team out there that's willing to kick the tires on Brandon Ayuk, and I think the 49ers, if they're able to offload that contract, they'd be more than happy to do so. So I think Kittle is probably the safest one there. Like he is like the DNA of that
yeah.
team. Like I don't think they're ever going to get rid of Kittle, but I'd say the chances of McCaffrey, Ayuk, and Debo all returning next year so slim.
Well, I mean, listen, a team like the Texans, who's going to lose Stephon Diggs, they have Tank Dell injured. Instead of going and spending a first round pick on a wide receiver, maybe you trade your fourth for Debo Samuel.
They've got the cap space. That's
I'm
the,
just
the
saying, like
luxury of having a rookie contract quarterback. Yep.
there's teams that can do that. The Bengals, if you don't want to sign T Higgins, go and trade a mid round pick for a Debo Samuel, and
Mhm.
that's a new wrinkle for your offense that you've never had. I mean, I think there are some competitive teams that, especially if it's just a mid-round pick for Debo, maybe I'm way off on that valuation, but an older wide receiver who's had his injury shares,
Yeah, I
of
don't think he'd
concerns. Like,
fetch more than like a fifth or a sixth right now, especially with the
yeah,
contract he's on and the injury history, the fall off in efficiency. That might be one of those where the San Francisco 49ers just say, hey, we'll take a fifth round pick just to offload this contract.
yeah, we get surprised every year by what players end up being worth on the open market. Next on here, JJ McCarthy at 17 and Keon Coleman at 18. We can kind of package these guys because we didn't see much from Keon Coleman this year, and we saw absolutely nothing from JJ McCarthy. But I think the good news is with McCarthy is we saw that the Vikings offense can still be good
Mhm.
without Kirk Cousins, and Sam Darnold has had his revival. Um, the guys in the Dynasty show believe Sam Darnold could just come right back to the Vikings and that they could franchise him. I wonder if maybe the Vikings don't just hold on to Daniel Jones and let him kind of come in, be the starter, and let's just do this one more time with another quarterback that nobody believes in,
Mhm.
and there won't be much of a quarterback controversy when we let our young rookie guy, top pick, come back, JJ McCarthy. So yeah, I mean, JJ McCarthy could just hop right into a starting role with this Vikings offense, and it could be really good. But he's another guy I think needs a ton of reps, like a ton of reps. He's way behind schedule on that.
Yeah, he is, but I think, the reason I'm a little bit higher on McCarthy than you is just that I have just the utmost faith in Kevin O'Connell. Like, I
KOC
think that,
man.
yeah, like, you go throw on some purple, and I'm pretty sure you could throw for 3,000 yards in this offense, Alfredo. Like, he just can turn
I got a gun.
he could turn anybody for an arm. Let's
Yes, yeah. Let's edit it properly.
yeah.
Rocket for an arm.
Rocket for an arm, yeah.
Next.
And that's really it. I mean, like, we haven't seen anything from JJ McCarthy. I think to have a strong take on him would be foolish. It's the same exact situation that it was going into last year.
Yeah.
A young guy without a ton of experience in a good situation. It's really hard to move him up or down because we haven't seen anything. The only difference between this year and next year is that now he's a shorter rookie contract window. But yes, I'm pretty confident with where I've got him as a top 15 guy still.
Dave, the other guy. Keon Coleman.
Do we have to talk about him?
I just want to do this. I just want to do this.
The
How many
101 of press
games?
conferences.
Yeah. Beloved. Beloved. How many games out of his 17 do you think he had one catch?
I'm gonna guess like 8.
Damn. Yeah. Eight. 8 games with one
Steel
catch.
trap up here, man. I don't even need to go on
Yeah.
PFR. It's just ingrained in my brain.
Yeah. 3 games with more than 3 catches on the season.
That's bad.
Yeah. His one big blow up game was 4 catches on 7 targets against the Tennessee Titans for 125 yards. There was flashes. There was flashes. There was times where broken coverages led to touchdowns. There were flashes here and there. Josh Allen's really good at that backyard football, and that's what Keon Coleman is good at. He just still doesn't win often enough on contested catches. He's still just not a refined route runner. He's just one of those guys that is good at backyard football. And I think as he gets more ingrained in the offense, he could get better at it. But I
I
think a
think
lot of
them
people,
panicking midseason and going for Amari Cooper also speaks volumes about how they feel about Keon Coleman. They thought Keon
yes,
Coleman would be that wide receiver one. Khalil Shakir took a huge step forward. Matt Collins was productive, and they still said,
Matt Collins, dude.
"You need to go get somebody else."
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry, like not to just like bash Keon Coleman here. Like there's potential. there's potential, but he's one of those guys like I was not very high on going into the draft process, and for all of these same reasons, and nothing in his rookie year really changed my mind a whole lot. I hope he can make it happen, especially on a good Bills team. Let's see what their offense does going into next year.
Hey,
Final
Alfredo, guess
tier,
how many games?
yeah,
Guess how many games Xavier Worthy had one catch? One.
two. Oh, well, there you go.
Just one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 All right, final tier here, and we won't do too much on these guys because a lot of it, Dave, is just well, they could be good. We have to see what happens around them. But at 19, Xavier Legette. At 20, Jalen Coker. So we've got the teammates, the Carolina Panthers receivers.
Hey, let's throw
And
another
then,
Panther in there.
yeah, at 21, Jonathan Brooks. It's just so Panthers that it's like they could be good,
Yeah.
but we got no idea how good that team's going to be. And we also don't know what they're going to do in the offseason. They may say, like, man, we've really got something here. Let's start spending some money on skill players. Let's go draft some skill players early. Let's just because they have a good offensive line. And then to finish this thing out, we've got Braylon Allen, Isaac Garindo, Trey Benson, all of the running backs here. And I think with every single one of these guys, Brooks, Allen, Garindo, Benson, you can simply say they've got another running back in the fold. Some of them have multiple running backs in the fold. Jonathan Brooks, the Chuba Hubbard thing, I think just absolutely tanks a lot of his value he's had. Braylon Allen, you've got Breece Hall and Isaiah Davis. Isaac Garindo, we don't know what they're going to do at running back, and he could be the one that sees the biggest boost in value, where he could just jump up multiple tiers and be right there with Tyrone Tracy. And we're saying, hey, starting running back for the San Francisco 49ers, that's awesome. We could do the Isaiah Pacheco thing year after year. How long until this late draft or undrafted guy is just like not really the guy anymore? What are your thoughts here on these running backs, Dave?
I love them. I mean, these are like my primary targets in trades right now. I'm trying to get these guys as throw-ins or seeing if I can get them for a third-round pick. Even the guys that aren't in this tier that are behind, Jalen Wright, Blake Corum, Marshawn Lloyd, Isaiah Davis. Like I said, I don't care about running backs. Like I'm never going to be the guy that's going to pay up for a Bucky
Running backs are
Irving.
people too.
Yeah, well, they're just the scraps at the bottom of my dynasty roster is what they are, and then I will go out and trade for Blake Corum, not because I think Blake Corum is going to steal the role from Kyron Williams, but if Kyron Williams gets hurt, you're getting Kyron Williams production from Blake Corum for a fraction of the cost. So this is where I live in dynasty, is just trying to have like a bunch of these very young injury away guys. And we see the year two breakouts all the time. Year two breakouts are so common. So even though Marshawn Lloyd and Blake Corum and Braylon Allen and Isaac Rendo, Trey Benson, these guys might not have done much as rookies, there's still ample opportunity for them to break out in year two, whether it just be that they've taken that step forward or that, the veteran ahead of them walks in free agency or gets traded or gets injured. There's so many paths. I just want young running backs on my roster. So, looking right now, again, at Keep Trade Cut, like you could probably go out and get Blake Corum for a third. You could probably go out and get Isaac Orendo for a fourth. And if that's how cheap these guys are, I'll take them.
I don't know about Garindo for a fourth. I think probably an early third or something. I think there's enough people that are excited about the potential there that still don't believe in McCaffrey.
Oh, if McCaffrey walks, Garendo is going to
it's going to skyrocket.
Jordan Mason, he's a free agent as well. So if they don't bring Jordan Mason back and if they release Christian McCaffrey, then Isaac Garendo gets into that, what was it, 2020 CEH range where it's just like, hey, he's young and he's on a good offense and the opportunity's there.
Don't say that name. Don't do that.
Two CEH references in one show, Alfredo. That's how you know we're already deep into the offseason.
Crushing it. All right. Final two guys here. We kind of did this one out of order, but the Panthers wide receivers, Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker. You're higher on Legette. I am higher on Coker. And for me, it's simply this. I think Coker's a better route runner. I think he does a lot of the things that you want a wide receiver to do better than Legette. He's the big slot. And I think that's something we have found to be very valuable for Bryce Young, the slot wide receiver. That's why Adam Thielen has had himself a little bit of a fantasy renaissance here and there. And I think that this is a team that wants to move forward with Jalen Coker and that he could continue to be soaking up some target volume like he did towards the end of this year. So I like him quite a bit. And I think he's going to be really cheap in a lot of dynasty leagues. But let's also just say this. If you have Jalen Coker on your roster, it's because you got him in the final round of your rookie draft or you picked him up and taxi squatted him and then he was really good and now you're feeling great about it. Now, If you don't believe in the Panthers, you're cashing in and you're just saying, okay, good. I got something for my Jalen Coker. But I think most people who have him are probably keeping him.
Yeah, and Leggett really tumbled down the rankings from where he was going. I mean, he was getting drafted down with that 1-2 turn, and now we've got him ranked, borderline top 20 player. It was tough because there were some flashes from Leggett, but one of the problems that plagued him in college, which was not the best hands, carried over into the NFL. So even if he's able to get open, and even if he can make plays after the catch, he's got to catch the ball, and that seems to be a little bit of a problem right now. There was obviously the big play at the end of the season that kind of cost them that win late in the year on the wide open drop touchdown catch against Philadelphia. But it wasn't just that. Like, he had a lot of drops, and some of those drops ended up turning into turnovers as well. So I'm still a believer in Leggett because he's got the physical traits. But if he starts off next season with the same issue with ball security, it's going to be really tough to keep insulating his value.
We just didn't see enough of those explosive plays from Leggett, who that's what he's going to be touted for, as being this versatile athlete who can make explosive plays, and we didn't see that. And then he was getting the target volume through various games, 8 targets, 9 targets, 5, 7, 6. Like, we're seeing there's a 10-target game on here. The stats are littered with some big games where he's getting touchdowns and making plays. And what's actually really disheartening is, as you get towards the end of the year, is where you see the inefficiencies of 8 targets for 2 receptions and 8 targets for 4 receptions. And there was the glaring inefficiencies, the poor catch rate, the drops, like you mentioned. Those are the things where those guys need to get their confidence back, and the teams need to show that they still believe in them. We're saying all these things about Xavier Leggett, and he was the Panthers' leading receiver.
Right.
It's just a matter of how the season ended for them.
He was the leading receiver because Adam Thielen was injured. I think a healthy Adam Thielen would have been the guy. Yeah.
Yeah. But that leads me to think, I think the Panthers are still looking for that number one guy. I hear Deontay Johnson might be available. I'm just saying.
On that note, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week.
T. Higgins. I'm just saying. I wanted it last year.
T. Higgins
to the Panthers.
That would be nice. That would be
all you Clemson fans would be so happy to have him back home.
I know we're talking rookie rankings here, but by Bryce Young. We're talking some dynasty stuff here.
Yeah.
A lot of people might look at what he did at the end of the season as kind of fluky, but he looks so good. And multiple different coaching staffs and offenses to learn. Seems like he finally figured it out. I think the future is very bright for Bryce Young.
Dave, he was top 12 quarterback at the end of the year there. I mean, it didn't happen by mistake. We're going to be back again next week. It's going to do it for us today, but we're going to be back again next week, and we're going to recap the Senior Bowl, taking a look at some of the biggest names, the winners and losers from that week. Sometimes these winners are absolute stars going into the NFL draft. They have great big rookie years. Other times, it does not matter. And so we're going to try to sift through a lot of that fool's gold and the other bad words I'm not allowed to say on this broadcast. But Dave, this is kicking off a lot of our rookie content that we're going to have. This is our only Dynasty video we do. So if you're here strictly for Dynasty, we're going to be doing a lot of rookie stuff throughout the offseason. So be here for that. You've also got the Football Guys Dynasty show that you can subscribe to as well. But we're going to be here with you guys all offseason doing rookie and NFL draft stuff and talking about how the fantasy ranks for redraft are going to be changing in the offseason. But we're going to be ranking these rookies and having a good time while we're doing it. So make sure you subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast, go ahead, take a minute to leave a review there and just drop a comment what you like about the show. We're going to be here with you guys all off season. As always, I want to thank you guys for watching and listening all the way through. For myself, for Dave, we'll see you next time. Adios.